Hi everyone, it's me, Dr. Edwards. I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about what I consider to be the basic components of a speech. A lot of people get really worried about all kinds of different elements of public speaking, such as delivery, the different body, all the different kind of things. But the truth is, in my opinion, and after 25 years of competing in competitive speech, coaching and teaching public speaking, I've found that you can boil down the basic components of a speech that can really apply into any situation. And really can apply from informative to persuasion to special occasion speeches. So if you follow this basic skeletal structure, you basically have found 75% of the tools you actually need when it comes to public speaking. So over the next few minutes, I'd like to talk to you about what those basic components are, and then provide you some insight into how you can try to put any kind of speech together. Because when it comes to informative versus persuasion versus, say, special occasion, when it comes to the basic structure, there really is no difference. Now, when you put in terms of that skeletal structure, when you put different kind of meat on the bones, of course, there will be different kind of content, different kinds of tone, different forms of delivery, and maybe even some different organizational patterns. But the basic structure of a speech is the same across all venues of different speeches. So let's jump right in, shall we? So when it comes, as I said, comes down to it, most speeches share some basic components. Okay. And so once you master those basics, you can kind of move on to different kinds of speeches. So when we're talking about those basic components, there are three elements of a good speech: intro, body, and conclusion. And each component has specific subtopics that you can master when it comes to trying to engage in public speaking. So when we talk about introductions, I say that there are, at least 4 to potentially 5. The reason why there's potentially 4 or 5, it depends on who you're talking to, and I'll explain what I mean about that in the next slide. But your book will say that there are 5 components of a speech. Sometimes, you can argue about that. I say there are a minimum of 4, and then you can also add a 5th one if you'd like. Okay. So, for example, the basic introductions include at least 4 components. The first being an attention getter. What is an attention getter? Well, an attention getter can be a number of different things. First, an attention could be something like a rhetorical question. How many of you have experienced a loss from someone's death or cancer? It could be a joke. What do you get when you cross a banana with an orange? A brorange, or something like that, but usually attention getters have to be relevant to specifically your topic. I think the best attention getters are anecdotes or hypothetical situations, things that really kind of go in depth into go straight into your topic. Again, but they should relate directly to your topic in some way, shape, or form. And typically an introduction shouldn't be more than probably 45 seconds to 1 minute when we're constructing our overall speech. Just some guidelines that I've found. 1, never start with a source. It sounds really weird if you start with, according to the New York Times or something like that. It just doesn't work very well. Don't start by announcing your name. Now, I know for the video recording that you do have to announce your name and so forth. But when we're talking about actually starting the speech itself, you don't say, "Hi, I'm Jason Edwards, and today I'm going to talk about video games." And then you start with your attention getter. It doesn't make any sense because you've already given us what your speech topic is about, and then you're going to start. The logic doesn't work. Okay, so don't start by announcing your topic. Again, that's a bit odd. And then start always with some kind of attention getter. The throwaway attention getter that a lot of students end up using is a hypothetical question, or not a hypothetical, but a rhetorical question. How many of you have played the lottery? How many of you have watched a football game? Whatever it might be. Those are fine to get you started, but I think you should add more depth to your attention getter and to your introduction by providing an anecdote or some kind of hypothetical situation. And we'll take a look at some examples when we do the discussion forums, and I'll post some other examples that I think might be illustrative of how you can construct a proper attention getter. The second component is the so what or significance statement. Now, when we're doing the order, you can actually mix and match some of these around. So, for example, the attention getter must always come first. But when it comes to the second component, your significance or the so what, you could actually flip-flop if you wanted, say, the thesis statement and the significance, because sometimes it just kind of depends on what your topic is and what kind of information you have. But the significance or so what is important because the idea is, why should we spend the next few minutes listening to your speech? Aside from the fact that you have to do it for this particular class, you have to provide some kind of, well, why is this topic important? If this topic affects millions of people, where you can cite some kind of source or something, then of course, then it would have a lot of significance. But just because it doesn't affect a million people doesn't mean that it doesn't have some kind of so what or significance in some way, shape, or form. You could share a personal story about how perhaps someone close to you suffered from some kind of cancer, or how somebody's talk impacted your life, or whatever it might be. That would be certainly something that would certainly add to those kinds of significance. The important thing is to demonstrate why we should certainly listen to that particular speech. The third component is your credibility statement. Now, this is the one where I think you could potentially get rid of if you don't want to include it. Credibility statements are important because they demonstrate your ethos. Now, ethos is important because ethos, according to Aristotle, and if you took a look at that previous lecture on the history of public speaking, we've encountered Aristotle. If you also read the first couple chapters in your text, you'll also encounter them. But ethos is one of the most important aspects of public speaking. In fact, Aristotle argued that it was the most important, because without the idea of credibility, it's really hard for different people to believe what you're saying. Now, when you're doing your speeches, I think that you have built-in credibility, because I assume that you're not going to plagiarize. I assume that you've done some research. I assume that you've done the work. And because of that, I give you the benefit of the doubt and that idea of credibility. However, if you're speaking about something that you personally know about, or that you've had a great deal of experience with, then of course that's something that you potentially want to highlight. So you might say, as I just mentioned before, after 25 years of public speaking, that gives me some kind of sense of ethos. That's the reason why I can say that these kind of basic components are important, cut across all speeches. Thesis statements. You must include a thesis statement in your introduction. And that thesis statement is a simple declarative sentence about what this speech is about. Today I'm going to talk to you about beeswax and why it's important. Yay. You could talk about, today I'm going to talk about the cartoon Tom and Jerry. I'm open to a whole host of different kinds of topics, as long as, one, they're the controversy surrounding. One, you don't, you show us how to load a gun or do drugs or anything that would be illegal or that would get you or me in trouble in some way, shape, or form. But I'm open to a whole host of different things when it comes to your informative speeches. And again, we'll talk about that as we go through. And the final component is a preview. And I consider a preview is like one of the biggest things that I think that students struggle with, but you must provide something for your audience. Because your audience has to know where you're going. And if I don't understand where you're going, if you don't include that in your particular presentation, I guarantee you the rest of the people don't know. So a preview or a roadmap of what you're going to cover is simply, first I'm going to talk about how beeswax is made. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the different uses of beeswax. And finally, I'm going to talk about the future of this amazing product. But see that first, second, third, or something that specifically highlights what you're going to talk about. A preview is an extremely important aspect. In fact, the simpler, the better. I love explicit previews. Beat me over the head. I would love for you to do that. And as I mentioned in the notes, I love explicit previews. Okay? The second component of your speech is the body of your speech. Typically, the body contains 2 to 3 points, depending on what you're doing. If you try to include more than that, you'll run out of time. Typically, the body of the speech will have no more than 4. But when we're doing different kinds of main points and so forth, 3 is pretty standard. And the reason why for that is, 1, for time issues, but 2, a lot of main points could be broken down potentially into sub-points, or you can do some different kinds of work with them. You can't cover everything, so the more narrow your topic, the better. The tighter that it is, again, we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'm more than happy to give you some ideas for specific topics and help you break down different kinds of speeches that you're looking at potentially doing. But each main point should be about the same length. And then as you transition from main to point, it's important that you try to use internal summaries or internal transitions. So you might say, well, now that we've looked at how beeswax is made, let's take a look at the different kinds of uses for what beeswax can be utilized in our modern day industry. Notice in that specific sentence, I summarized what I talked about in that particular first point, and then I moved on to the second one. You should try to do that for every single main point because it just provides a nice, elegant way of transitioning from point to point and so forth. And it kind of sums up what you've done. And the final component are your conclusions. Your conclusions are typically fairly short, 30 to 45 seconds. Don't add any more specific content to your conclusion. You basically do two things. First, you review what you covered. Today, we've looked at the different, how beeswax is made. Secondly, we looked at the various kinds of applications of beeswax. And finally, we've looked at what the future might hold for this amazing thing in nature. Okay, I've done that, and then you bring it back to the introduction. Maybe you conclude with your story. Maybe you answer your hypothetical situation. Maybe you answer your rhetorical question or give us the punchline of your joke. Whatever it might be, it's something that you want to add. You don't want to add a whole bunch of new material. You can end with a quotation if you'd like, whatever it might be. But it's important that you don't add any kind of more substantive material from the body because that should be folded into the main part of your speech. Okay? Now once you've done that, if you master that basic structure, intro having 4 to 5 components, the body having 2 to 3 main points, and your conclusion having 2 points, you do that, you can take that structure and apply it to basically every single speech that you do. You can also apply that basic structure to any kind of writing component. You'll take a look at most writing assignments here at Bridgewater State or here at other schools. You'll have those kind of basic conclusions: intro, body, conclusion. Master those basic components and the subpoints within those ideas, and you've already won 75% of the battle toward public speaking. And if you have any questions about anything that I've said on this particular video, please send me some questions right away, and I'm more than happy to help you out in some way, shape, or form. Thank you, and have a good day, guys.